When are you abandoning yourself? So often we abandon ourselves because of old programming that we're not even conscious of. So while we know something doesn't feel good, we may not realize that it's not because of the other person that we could be potentially blaming in that moment, but it's actually because we've abandoned ourselves in that moment. And I had an experience recently that I'll share with you. I wonder if you'll recognize yourself in the experience, and hopefully this will help you as it helped me to realize what I was actually doing in these moments of being triggered into old stress patterns. A few months ago, I was having a conversation with someone. I had just finished a big meeting that I was attending, and the person asked me how the meeting went. And at first I just responded, it was great. And then I figured we would go on to other things, but there was clear interest in hearing more about the meeting. And so I sat down with them and started telling them about the experience and the high points of the meeting. And after about a minute, I started seeing them get distracted by a television nearby. And upon noticing their distraction, I felt I had failed as a storyteller, that I was not being engaging enough. And so immediately I started shutting down, especially given the sensitivity of the topic, because it was an important meeting for me. I felt like I just wanted to disappear and run away from the scene of the crime so that I could repair in private. And so I quickly wrapped up the story, went to another room, and felt the tears welling up at that point. And in that moment, I thought of how my response to the situation was only growing my detachment from the situation, my potential frustration about what had happened, and storytelling in my own head that started from a very young age. In my home, it was extremely important to speak to my dad with the most succinct language as possible, without any idiosyncratic habits in the way that I spoke, that I or my sister spoke. And so you had to be straight to the point and no fluff. And that was really challenging for someone who likes to speak as colorfully as I do. And so when I would speak to him, my heart would start pounding, and I would feel this urgency to get whatever I needed out. And that created this unnatural way of speaking for me, to the point where it made me just want to shut down. What I was experiencing in this situation now, 40 years later, was that same desire to shut down. And I was realizing in that moment, for the first time with this level of clarity, that this had nothing to do with the other person. This had to do with me abandoning myself and my need to be heard in a moment that was important to me. And it wasn't the other person's responsibility as much as it was my responsibility to not shrink in that moment of disconnection, and instead reach out with a query about what just happened. I feel like I just lost connection with you. What's coming up for you right now? What's going on with you right now? And the moment I realized that was the person I wanted to be, I knew that I was changing my patterns. We know it is so hard to change your neural pathways, but it is available to you. And in those moments of being connected with your conscious self and seeing the person you want to be in order to forge true connection and increase that level of awareness and compassion you have for yourself and for the other, those are the moments where we create new habits and new behaviors and new opportunities for how we will automatically respond in the future. It may take more practice, of course, but it's another option in the multiple choice of how we know even how to respond to various situations. So being true to the person that I wanted to be as opposed to the person I had just been, I went back into the other room and sat back down with the person and told them what just happened, that I felt I needed to shrink in order to accommodate the moment. But what I really felt was sad that our connection was lost, especially during a time where I was sharing something that was pretty tender to me. They were so apologetic and explained what was happening on the TV that got their attention. And what was amazing to me was that none of that really mattered. Of course, I appreciated the apology and the explanation of what was happening on the TV. I know if there was something that caught my attention, if there were a flurry of Pomeranians on the television, I would not have been able to concentrate on almost anything but the television at that point. And so I certainly understand temptation and being distracted. What was remarkable to me was that none of that mattered. And when we hear that saying, which I heard probably for the first time about 15 years ago, that be careful when you're blaming someone, because when you're pointing at somebody else, you're pointing one finger and three other fingers are pointing back at you. Always look at yourself first. And I think in so many situations, we could look at this story as, well, you know, I was telling this personal story to somebody and it meant something to me and I was being really vulnerable. And then they start looking at the television. It's so easy to stay on that level and dismiss where you may be abandoning yourself because you're pointing at someone else. And really, your opportunity for connection is there. And if then you reach out and say, hey, I feel like I lost you there, what's going on? And they say, oh, this is important, I'd rather watch the television. Okay, well then you have another conversation that you need to have, or maybe you don't have a conversation at all. Maybe now you understand where you stand with this other person, and it may not be where you want to stand, and there may be no way to change that. And so it may mean that you reroute the direction of that relationship. But again, that is you being true to yourself and not trying to change someone else and not making excuses for their behavior, but instead being true to your needs and what it is that you need in every moment, but especially the moments where you're feeling triggered or rejected. And also something important to understand is that rejection, though it feels like a feeling, is not a feeling. It is an interpretation of what is going on inside of you. If you're feeling sad or helpless or worried, those are the feelings, but the rejection is a story you're telling yourself about what you're experiencing. And it may not be true at all. I think in so many cases it's not true. And that's a whole other video that we can go into, not taking things personally and not, as tempting as it is, creating a story about things that you simply don't have enough data to tell a story about. That wraps up the video for today. I hope this has been helpful, and I hope it is just one more piece of inspiration for you to Show as much compassion for yourself every single day, and it is all incremental, right? We're not light switches. So as much as we know that we need to give ourselves more compassion, more care, it takes time and new habits being built, new behaviors being repeated over and over before it becomes a healthy pattern where we don't have to think about it. And there is a never-ending well of abundance that comes from true self-care and that self-awareness. And when I say self, again, it is that compassionate, calm, courageous, curious, caring being that we all have inside of ourselves. And all the other parts that are in disharmony and creating fear, anxiety, depression, making us feel like we have to play a certain role in order to be worthy in our lives, those are just taking our energy away. They deserve love, they deserve care and compassion. All of our parts are doing the best they can to give us the best life that they can give us. But when we're acting through these various parts, these protective parts, versus acting through ourselves, our heart-led selves, we are talking about two very distinctly different lives. And each of us has the option to choose whether we live through self or whether we live through these protective parts. And so I send all of my wishes to you to choose self, because that is the most liberating, empowering, abundant path that there is. And the parts, it's probably a more predictable life, because that's the way you've lived, or most of us have lived for the majority of our lives. But the treasures are in finding that connection to yourself and living that true, authentic, beautiful life that is meant just for you. And if you'd like help and support on your journey, I would be so privileged and happy to work with you in that effort. All of the links are below to book a coaching session with me. I also offer complimentary chemistry sessions that we can just meet, connect, understand if we're a match for our coaching relationship, which I absolutely recommend if we haven't coached yet together. And I would love to get the chance to speak with you. So please like or subscribe if you are so inclined. I would love to see you back here, and comment below if any of this resonates or if you have any other feedback you want to provide. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Wishing you all the best and sending so much love, and thanks for being here. Bye-bye.